All right, so get ready, because today we're diving into something pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
How using Satanism in music
Hmm?
can actually shape minds.
Wow.
We're going deep on this text called Satanism in the Music Industry.
Okay.
And let me tell you, it goes way deeper than just like typical devil music, you know?
I bet.
Yeah.
So right off the bat,
Yeah.
this text challenges that simple view of Satanism in music, like,
Yeah.
being all about just worshiping the devil.
Yeah.
It actually frames it as like a tool, something artists use for rebellion, to make bold statements, and even for social commentary.
So less about the literal devil and more about like pushing boundaries and challenging norms.
Exactly.
It makes me think about the early metal scene.
Okay.
Black Sabbath, Venom.
Sure?
They were using these dark occult themes,
Yeah.
but it felt more like a big screw you to the establishment, you know?
Oh, absolutely. It was a way to break free from expectations and say, we're not playing by your rules. And, you can't ignore the historical context here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Satan himself is often seen as like the ultimate rebel.
Right.
The one who defies authority.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's not surprising that artists who want to make a statement would gravitate towards that imagery.
Yeah.
It's a way to tap into that raw energy of rebellion.
Right.
But it's not just about shock value, is it?
No, not at all.
Our source digs into the psychology of how music affects us.
Right.
The science of sound itself.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
We often take it for granted, but
Totally.
music is literally just vibrations in the air.
Uh-huh.
But those vibrations have a direct impact on our brains,
Right.
influencing our moods, our
Yeah.
thoughts, even our actions sometimes.
I mean, we all know music can make us feel happy or sad or pumped up.
Of course.
But our source takes it a step further.
Yeah.
It talks about how different elements of music,
Okay.
like the tempo, the frequency,
Yeah.
the rhythm,
Yeah.
they can create very specific psychological effects.
Right, like think about it.
Right.
A slow tempo and low frequencies,
Right.
like what you might find in ambient music,
Right.
that can induce relaxation,
Makes sense.
but then speed things up, use higher frequencies,
Yeah.
and suddenly you're feeling energized, maybe even a bit anxious.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then there's dissonance,
Oh, yeah.
those clashing, unsettling sounds that can really evoke a sense of unease.
Okay, so now I'm picturing those unsettling sounds combined with like dark satanic themes.
Yeah.
That's got to create a pretty intense experience for the listener, right?
You're getting it. The music itself primes the listener for a certain kind of emotional and psychological journey.
Okay.
It sets the stage, so to speak.
Right.
And then when you layer on those themes of darkness,
Yeah.
rebellion, the supernatural,
Uh-huh.
the impact is amplified. It hits on a much deeper level.
So it's not just about the lyrics or the imagery.
No.
The music itself is playing a huge role in shaping how we experience those themes. But is there any evidence that this kind of music, with its dark themes and powerful sounds,
Right.
can actually influence behavior?
Yeah.
I mean, is there something subliminal happening here?
That's a question a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And it's where things get a bit tricky. Our source mentions the Mozart effect.
Okay.
You've probably heard of it.
Yeah, the idea that listening to classical music can make you smarter.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that being a big thing for a while.
Right.
But is there any truth to it?
It's actually a hotly debated topic.
Really?
Some studies have shown a temporary boost in certain cognitive functions,
Okay.
while others have found no effect at all.
Interesting.
But here's the key takeaway.
Right.
Regardless of whether it makes you smarter, the Mozart effect highlights the fact that music can impact our mental states.
Okay.
And there's plenty of other research that supports this idea.
Uh-huh.
Studies have shown that music can affect our mood,
Right.
our focus,
Mm.
even our decision-making.
So is it a stretch to think that music with satanic themes could have a similar effect,
Yeah.
even if it's not as direct as like, listen to this and you'll suddenly become evil?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that music has power.
Yeah.
It can influence how we feel, what we think about,
Yeah.
and potentially even how we act.
Mhm.
But to say that it can directly control us,
Right.
that's where we need to be careful.
Yeah.
Our source acknowledges that the research on the specific effects of satanic themes in music is inconclusive.
Okay.
We can't draw a direct line and say, this song made someone do this.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Human behavior is incredibly complex.
It really is.
It's never just one thing.
Right.
But the fact that music can have any influence on our thoughts and actions, that's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is.
It makes you wonder if there's more to this idea of Satan as a symbol.
That's actually a really interesting point you bring up, and it's something the source delves into.
Oh, yeah?
It suggests that for many, Satan isn't simply a literal figure,
Okay.
but rather an allegory, a representation of something deeper and more complex.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, it argues that Satan, in this context, can represent the pursuit of personal freedom,
Okay.
the rejection of societal constraints, the courage to question everything.
Wow.
It's about embracing the outsider, the one who challenges the status quo.
So listening to music with satanic themes could be a way of exploring those ideas.
Yeah,
A way to confront your own fears, push boundaries, and figure out what you truly believe.
exactly. It's about challenging the norms and forging your own path, even if it means going against the grain.
Right.
And our source argues that this kind of exploration can be incredibly valuable.
You know what? That's actually a really empowering way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's not about worshiping evil.
Right.
It's about self-discovery,
Uh-huh.
critical thinking, and defining your own values.
And that brings us to a crucial point.
Okay.
The idea that satanic imagery in music isn't always about literal devil worship. It can be a tool for exploring those deeper questions about morality, spirituality, and even personal identity.
So we've gone from the historical context of rebellion to the psychology of sound, and now this idea of Satan as a symbol for personal exploration.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much depth there is to this whole topic.
We've only just scratched the surface.
Right.
There's still so much more to uncover about how these themes play out in different musical genres
Yeah,
and how they continue to evolve.
for sure.
But before we dive into that,
Okay.
let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned so far.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
What are some of the key takeaways that stand out to you?
Well, I think it's really striking how we've gone from this image of devil music to seeing how satanic themes can be used for self-discovery and pushing those societal boundaries,
Yeah.
It's like the music becomes a soundtrack for questioning everything.
And you know what's fascinating is that this exploration, it takes different forms depending on the musical genre. While our source focuses mainly on rock and metal, satanic imagery, it pops up in other genres too.
Oh, for sure.
Even pop.
Absolutely. Think about someone like Lady Gaga.
Oh yeah, great example.
Her performances and videos often play with these dark religious themes.
Right.
But it's not about worshiping evil.
Right.
It's more about challenging the norms, especially around sexuality and female empowerment.
Exactly. It's like she's using those symbols to reclaim control and push back against those traditional, often restrictive views of women in society.
Right.
And you see similar things with other pop artists like Britney Spears, who've also incorporated these kinds of visuals.
So it's like the same symbolic language is being used,
Yeah.
but the message shifts depending on the artist, the genre, the overall context.
Precisely in metal, it might be about raw power and rebellion against authority.
Yeah.
In pop, it could be about reclaiming sexuality or breaking free from those societal expectations.
Right.
It's not a one-size-fits-all interpretation.
Which makes studying this topic all the more interesting.
It really does.
It's like each artist is adding their own layer of meaning to these symbols,
Yeah.
creating a unique dialogue with their audience.
And, this use of satanic imagery, it often reflects deeper anxieties within society itself.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Satan has long been associated with temptation,
Right.
chaos, the things that disrupt order.
Yeah.
So when you see artists playing with these symbols, it can tap into people's fears
Okay.
about losing control, about the unknown, about the things that challenge their worldview.
That makes sense, especially during times of social upheaval or change.
Right.
Those anxieties can be heightened, and people might be more likely to project those fears onto something like music.
It's exactly what happened with the emergence of rock and roll.
Oh, yeah.
People were terrified it would corrupt the youth,
Right.
lead to delinquency, all sorts of social ills.
Yeah.
Then, of course, you had the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s, with heavy metal becoming the target of all sorts of accusations about promoting violence and devil worship.
Those were some pretty intense times.
They were.
Looking back, it's clear a lot of it was based on misunderstanding and misplaced fear.
Oh, yeah.
But it shows how powerful these symbols can be in tapping into those underlying anxieties.
It's a reminder that we need to approach this topic with nuance, to look beyond the surface shock value and ask ourselves,
Okay.
what's really going on here?
Right.
What are the artists trying to express?
Yeah.
What are the social and cultural forces at play?
It's about separating the art and the message from the fear-mongering and knee-jerk reaction.
Exactly.
And recognizing that music, especially music that challenges us, can be an opportunity for growth and understanding.
Absolutely. It's a chance to confront our own biases, to engage with different perspectives, and to broaden our understanding of the world.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
We've covered the historical context, the psychology of sound,
Right.
the social anxieties,
Mm.
and how the meaning of these symbols can shift depending on the genre.
Yeah.
What's next in our exploration?
Now that we have this foundation, I think it's time to look at some specific examples
Okay.
of artists who've used satanic themes in their music.
Okay.
We've mentioned a few names,
Okay.
but I'd love to delve deeper into their motivations, their artistic choices, and the impact their music has had.
That sounds fantastic. Let's get into some case studies and see how these ideas come to life in the music itself. All right, let's get into some specific artists and how they've used satanic themes in their music.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm really curious to see how these ideas we've been talking about,
Yeah.
actually play out in real-world examples.
It's one thing to talk about concepts,
Right,
but hearing them come alive in the music itself adds a whole other dimension.
for sure.
So let's start with Black Sabbath,
Okay.
a band that's often credited as one of the pioneers of heavy metal.
Yeah, for sure.
Their use of dark occult themes back in the 70s was pretty groundbreaking.
They were really pushing boundaries at the time.
Yeah.
Didn't their first album have a song literally called Black Sabbath?
It did, and it opens with the sound of church bells
Oh, wow.
and this incredibly ominous driving riff.
Okay.
It was a stark contrast to the poppy psychedelic music that was
Literally.
popular at the time,
Yeah.
and it definitely freaked some people out.
I can imagine. So was it all just about shock value? Or was there something more to it?
Their music tapped into something deeper.
Yeah.
Remember, this was the era of the Vietnam War.
Right.
Social unrest, a lot of disillusionment with the establishment.
Yeah.
Black Sabbath's lyrics often reflected that darkness and uncertainty, exploring themes of paranoia, social breakdown, and the darker side of human nature.
So it wasn't necessarily about worshiping the devil,
Right.
but using those images and sounds to reflect the anxieties of the time.
Exactly. They created this raw, powerful sound
Yeah.
that resonated with a generation that felt like the world was falling apart. And in doing so, they laid the groundwork for countless other heavy metal bands to explore those same dark themes.
Which brings us to Marilyn Manson.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about someone who knows how to push buttons and get a reaction.
He did.
He was practically public enemy #1 for a while there in the 90s.
He definitely knew how to use shock value.
Right.
But if you look beyond the theatrics and the provocative imagery,
Yeah.
his music often engaged with deeper issues.
Okay.
He was challenging societal norms,
Mm.
especially around religion and morality,
Mm.
forcing people to confront their own prejudices and hypocrisies.
So less about devil worship and more about social commentary.
Yes,
And making people think critically.
precisely. He used those satanic images to highlight the hypocrisy he saw in society,
Okay.
particularly within organized religion.
Right.
It was a way to expose the darkness he felt lurked beneath the surface of respectability,
Mm.
and his music with its industrial sound and aggressive energy
Yep.
provided the perfect backdrop for that message.
It's amazing how these artists use the same symbolic language, but in such different ways.
It is.
Black Sabbath reflecting the turmoil of their time.
Yeah.
Marilyn Manson challenging social norms. It shows how adaptable those themes can be.
And that adaptability continues today.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Think about someone like Lil Nas X,
Okay.
who's using those same satanic images, but in a completely different context.
Yeah, his video for Montero, Call Me By Your Name,
Yeah.
was incredibly controversial.
It was.
That lap dance on the devil's lap definitely got people talking.
It absolutely did. And while some saw it as blasphemous and offensive,
Right.
for others it was a powerful statement of self-acceptance
Mm.
and a rejection of religious condemnation, particularly around sexuality.
He's reclaiming those symbols, turning them on our head,
Yeah.
and using them to express his own truth. It's a reminder that these images can be incredibly powerful
Yeah.
and that their meaning can evolve over time and across different contexts.
You've hit the nail on the head. This exploration of Satanism in music has shown us that it's not about simple black and white definitions.
Right.
It's about nuanced context and the power of music to reflect the complexities of the human experience.
From the raw energy of Black Sabbath to the social commentary of Marilyn Manson
Right.
to the bold self-expression of Lil Nas X, we've seen how these themes can be used to challenge norms,
Yeah.
confront fears, and spark important conversations.
And as we wrap up our deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway is that music is more than just entertainment.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a reflection of who we are, what we believe, and what we struggle with as individuals and as a society.
It's a powerful tool for self-discovery
Absolutely.
and for connecting with something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes exploring those darker, more challenging themes can lead us to a deeper understanding of our own humanity.
So the next time you listen to music, take a moment to consider, what is it saying to you?
That's a good point.
What emotions does it evoke, and how does it shape your view of the world?
It's a journey of exploration that's well worth taking, and on that note, we'll leave you to your own reflections.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.